Alignment is an interesting concept in yoga. When I first began my yoga studies back in 1970, it was not Iyengar Yoga, and the word alignment was unheard and unused, at least in my circle of yoga experience at that time. I worked in a number of different traditions. And when I started teaching in sort of an eclectic tradition. And the teaching was more or less guiding people, leading people into the shapes of postures, as well as into some of the philosophical concepts underlying yoga, and some of the practices, the lifestyle practices of yoga. It wasn't really until 1975 that I got Mr. Iyengar's book, Light on Yoga, and there are some descriptions in that book about how to do the poses that talk about how things line up. And they also make it possible to understand the photos that are in the book, which are inspiring and intimidating and overwhelming. So I followed that book for the next 5 years, and then had my first Iyengar class with a lady named Karen Steffen. You may know her, a long time Iyengar teacher, and she came to Washington. She gave a 2-hour class at a rented hall in the city. And I went, and after that class, I realized that I knew absolutely nothing about what I was doing. She had trained for a number of years with Mr. Iyengar in Pune, and what she taught was the alignment of the poses. And that was really my first experience of that. And it turned my practice and my own experience of what the yoga was completely around. I realized that I hadn't really felt, you know, when in those days when you went to yoga class, there was energy, and sort of feel the flow and go with that flow and close your eyes, and there was a sort of floating along quality, at least the kind of yoga that I was exposed to and was practicing. Sorry. And I sort of felt energy and sort of felt a flow when I was doing it. I felt good, so that was energy and a flow. But when I really worked with alignment, even in that first class, something came alive inside of me that was powerful, and it was palpable, and it was unmistakable. It wasn't any of this, I wonder if I'm feeling what he or she is talking about. It was like, whoa, I'm definitely feeling what he or she is talking about. I understand what this is about. So then I became an Iyengar Yoga practitioner as the result of that, because that practice spoke to me. I studied with a few more teachers, notably Victor von Koten, who was then still an Iyengar teacher at that time. Spent 2 weeks with him in Cambridge, and that experience led me to Mr. Iyengar. Actually, the stories I'd heard about Mr. Iyengar did not particularly incline me to go to India. I was a child of the 60s, and it was all about peace and love for me. And yoga was about peace and love and unity and interconnectedness. And Mr. Iyengar was about hollering and shouting and being the lion of Pune. So that didn't sound too peace and loving to me. So I was never very interested in going to study with Mr. Iyengar. His book was fine. But Victor von Koten was a person of tremendous compassion, wonderful sense of humor, amazing energy, and just tremendous skill as a practitioner and teacher. And he was really, really close to Mr. Iyengar. He was like his son at that time. He spent lots and lots of time there in the house with Mr. Iyengar. And so I thought, how could somebody who's so fierce and wild have next to him somebody who's so wonderful and that person so devoted to him, of such a sweet nature? So I thought, there's only one way to find out about Mr. Iyengar, and that's to go myself. So I wrote, that was just toward the end of the time when you could write a letter and say, dear Mr. Iyengar, I'd like to come study with you. And he wrote back and said, sure, come in January. So I went in January of '81. And that was the beginning of my next 27 years with Bir Khalsa Iyengar. I'll be going again in December for his 90th birthday. And his practice is still amazing, and his energy is radiant. He is an unparalleled example of the benefits and power of of a deep and committed yoga practice. One of the cornerstones of the Iyengar method is alignment. And alignment means a lot of different things. There is the physical level of alignment, so that when you do a yogasana, your body is put together in certain patterns, certain forms, certain shapes. How those shapes are practiced, how they're arranged, has a tremendous effect on the quality of your experience as a practitioner when you practice. So part of the Iyengar method and part of how we teach, and a lot of how we teach actually, is to instruct people how to align the poses. And what that does is to, first and foremost, improve the safety aspect of the practice. When joints are misaligned, when bones are misaligned, when organs are being put under pressure in inappropriate ways, ill effects can be obtained from the practice. So how you organize the poses has a great deal to do with the health of the tendons, ligaments, bones, tissues, organs, the whole body. And I thought, this is a nice thing to say. And when you take a yoga class, you get the experience of that. But how am I going to make this tangible for you here? So without doing a class, because this is not an appropriate forum for that. So I thought we can do one thing to give you a little sense of the significance of alignment in a yoga pose, in your body at least right now. So what we'll do is, everybody sort of shifts realigns themselves just at the very thought. What we're going to need to do is, I'm going to ask you to stretch your arms out, and since we're set up this way, you're going to clobber the person next to you. So what I'd like to have you do is it looks like there are 3 seats here, so would the person in the middle stand up? And then the people next on the 2 sides can stay seated. And then there are 4 over there, so with the people on the aisles, so this is alignment. How your upper arm bone fits into your shoulder socket is the alignment of the shoulder joint, the relationship of the arm and the other 2 bones of the shoulder. You could feel when the alignment was of one characteristic, it was uncomfortable. It limited movement, painful, in fact. And the more you externally rotated your arms, the more freedom there was in that movement of raising your arms over your head. So how the bones fit together allowed for freedom, allowed for more comfort, and if we were putting weight on our arms, would allow for better support, as in dog pose or a handstand or an arm balance, something like that. So that aspect of physical alignment, how the poses are structured, has a lot to do with the quality of your experience as you do the poses, the freedom of movement, the sense of support in the poses, and the actions of the poses altogether, the comfort of it. Because Patanjali says, stira sukhamasana, posture should be steady and comfortable, sukha. So you have to find an element of comfort, and when you're misaligned, it's not possible. Right? So alignment is very important on that physical level, and we spent a lot of time